Minister, please.
Thank you. So I propose to take questions 61 and 191 together. As I'm sure deputies will agree, the EU-funded Interreg and Peace programmes continue to act as important drivers of regional development for the border region of Ireland and for Northern Ireland. Interreg programmes funded by the EU exist to address the challenges encountered by the border region. In the case of Ireland, an additional and unique programme, the Peace programme, addresses the challenges in the region arising from conflict. The current Interreg programme has a total value of €282 million and is aimed at promoting economic, social and territorial cohesion. The current Peace programme has a total value of €270 million and aims to promote peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland and in the border counties. Ever since the UK referendum on EU membership, the Government's clear and consistent position has been that it's committed to the successful implementation of the current programmes, but also to a successor after 2020. To that end, my officials and I have worked closely with the European Commission at all levels to ensure that this important source of funding for the border region continues post-Brexit. I'm pleased, therefore, that the Government's ambition for the programmes was reflected in last December's EU-UK joint report, in which both parties undertook to honour their commitments to the Peace and Interreg programmes under the current multiannual financial framework, and to examine the possibilities for future support. This was matched by a commitment from the Commission to propose the continuation of the programmes in its proposal for the next MFF, covering the period 21 to 27. This has now happened, and I warmly welcome the Commission's proposal for a special new Peace Plus programme that will build on and continue the work of both Peace and Interreg.
Thank you, Minister. On behalf of Deputy McConnell Logan, on your own behalf, Deputy Niamh Smyth.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. Minister, the reality of it is for the border counties and the border region, of course, Brexit is going to have a negative impact, and of course, depending on the draft withdrawal agreement, one way or the other, while it's a positive if we can get if the agreement can be made. However, for counties like Cavan, Monaghan, Donegal, and the whole border region, we very much depend on funds like the Peace funding. They've done significant work in terms of peace and reconciliation, as you've outlined, and lots of community projects have benefited and gained from that. You outlined there $270 million in terms of a budget for peace funding. As somebody who's from the border counties, they're a visible, tangible benefit and advantage to the area, and I know throughout the referendum, border counties in particular would have been very much aware of peace funding and the implications if we were to lose that. So I'd ask you, Minister, to ensure that you talked about the Peace Funding Plus, that is to continue and that the Government does commit to that going forward in the future.
Thank you, Deputy Smith.
Thank you. Well, I'm pleased to tell the Deputy that in the Peace 4 programme, which was €270 million, 83% of that funding is now committed, with 88 projects approved for funding. These include groups of projects under the Local Authority Peace Action Plans, and then projects in the area of shared education and giving additional support to children and young people. I've seen some of these projects myself, Deputy, and I'm aware of how valuable they are. And under the Interreg programme, €282 million has now been allocated, which is 87% of available funding, and this has now been committed to 32 different projects. As I said, Deputy, I am committed to working with the European Commission to try to put in place a successor programme to these funding streams, and this will form part of the negotiation that we'll be having with the Commission across most of next year in relation to the new European budget.
It is vitally important because in light of Brexit, and I know in Cavan County Council and Monaghan County Council, the peace offices play a very integral and significant role of our local authorities in terms of delivery for community, for social, and there is an economic benefit to all of these projects that are allocated peace funding. Our peace workers, Jane Crudden and various people like that in Cavan County Council and Monaghan County Council have been instrumental in delivering that, and because of their engagement with community groups, and of course community groups having the enthusiasm, the willingness and the foresight to take projects like this on. As we know, there's huge bureaucracy involved in all of these things too, and I would ask you, Minister, in placing more funding and securing more funding going forward, it would be important that community groups are not burdened down with further bureaucracy. And I know these things become more complicated and more complex as we go on, but I would ask you, in light of any future funding that you will be putting in and securing in place for the border regions, and of course that there is a positive bias towards the border area.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Well, it's in recognition of the vulnerability that our border counties in the northwest of our country could face because of the great challenge of Brexit, that, for example, in the Ireland 2040 plan, we've put particular focus on key projects on the N2 and the N3 that will be of particular benefit to the communities and counties that you are representing. It's why we're also committed to the A5 project, and it's why, for example, we've made particular commitments in relation to projects like the Ulster Canal. In relation to the bureaucracy and concerns that you raised there, I'll certainly keep that in mind, Deputy. I'm encouraged by the fact that the drawdown is so high. To see that in the case of both funds, over 80% of the funding has now been committed, points to the fact that these structures are working and can work. And as I said in my earlier point to you, Deputy, I will certainly, in the negotiations that will continue in relation to a successor to Peace and Interreg, keep your points in mind. I know these are valuable programmes. I know they've made a big difference on both sides of the border, and I would like and will work hard to deliver something that will take their place.
Thank you, Minister.